The forest cursed every healer before her, but her breath alone forced the Alpha King to shift back. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The night forest pressed close around Evelyn Ward as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. The air was cold enough to nip at her fingertips, carrying that strange metallic tang the elders once whispered about, a sign the curse was awake again. Dry leaves shifted under her boots in small, shallow crunches, each one echoing farther than it should have. Moonlight barely touched the forest floor, slipping through twisted branches like thin, silver wires. Every healer before her had stepped into this place with hope. None had walked back out. She knew the history. She felt the weight of it with every breath. Still, her pace stayed steady. Her hands were small, her frame slight, but the calm inside her felt anchored, warm, stubborn in a way that didn't belong to this forest at all. Somewhere ahead, something big moved, a low ripple through the brush, followed by a soft, unsteady growl that trembled in the cold air. Evelyn paused. The sound wasn't menacing. It was struggling. She inhaled once, slow, letting her heartbeat settle. Her breath appeared before her in a faint, ghostly cloud. She moved closer. Step, crunch, step, crunch. The forest responded with a deep groan, as if warning her back, but Evelyn kept going until the trees parted just enough to reveal a form collapsed near a fallen log. A massive wolf-like silhouette, thick dark fur reflecting thin moonlight. Shoulders heaving, claws curled tight against the ground as though fighting something inside. Her breath caught, not from fear, but from recognition. This wasn't just any creature. This was him, Cane Thorn, the Alpha King. Even in this shape, she could feel the authority rolling off him like heat from a furnace, though now it flickered and broke as if the curse was tearing at the edges. His head jerked up at the sound of her boot shifting against the dirt. Gold eyes locked onto hers, bright, strained, glowing faintly in the shadows. A warning rumbled in his chest, low and uneven. Evelyn didn't move back. She let her breath steady again, warm in the cold night, and something in Cane's stance trembled at the sight of it. The forest seemed to pull tighter around them, the curse watching, waiting for her to fail like the others. But Evelyn stepped closer, her voice soft, barely a whisper carried by cool air. I'm here to help. Cane's growl stuttered. His massive frame shivered, not with rage, but with the effort of holding on. Another healer would have frozen. Another would have run. Evelyn lifted one hand instead, allowing the faint glow of her breath-warmed touch to color the air between them. The wind softened. The trees hushed. And the Alpha King, bound by a curse that had broken everyone before her, lowered his head just enough to show he was listening. The forest did not understand it yet, but something had already shifted. The wind shifted around Evelyn Ward as she stepped closer, carrying the faint scent of pine sap and cold earth. Cane Thorn's shoulders rose and fell in uneven waves, each breath a struggle against something she could not see but could feel pressing at the edges of the clearing. The glow from her fingertips dimmed gently as she knelt a short distance from him, careful, steady, giving him the choice to move away if he wished. He did not. Instead, the great shape of him eased down, claws settling into the soil as though it grounded him. His golden eyes stayed fixed on her, bright with confusion and something quieter beneath. Evelyn took another slow breath, letting her warmth spread. The air between them softened, no longer tense, just heavy with possibility. She reached into her satchel with deliberate movement, withdrawing a small cloth pouch that jingled softly with dried leaves and crushed roots. The sound was mild, harmless, drifting across the cold space like a reminder of gentler things. Cane's ears flicked with faint curiosity. This will not harm you, she whispered. Her voice stayed low, shaped for calm, shaped to meet his trembling control. She sprinkled a bit of the herb blend on the ground between them. The powder glimmered faintly, reacting to the warmth of her breath as she leaned close. A muted shimmer rose like fog, then dispersed. Cane inhaled. His eyes widened for a moment, then softened, the tension in his frame easing just a fraction. The curse resisted her touch. Evelyn could sense it, a cold pulse coming from deeper within the forest, as if watching through the trees. She did not challenge it directly. She simply breathed, letting her steady exhale create a gentle rhythm Cain could mirror. He tried. She saw his chest rise, slow, shaky, then fall again. When he attempted another breath, it wavered less. Moonlight slid across his fur in a pale ribbon. Evelyn felt the shift in the air, a small reassurance that her presence was not pushing him over the edge. She moved to sit beside a fallen log, leaving a respectful space between them. Her hands rested on her knees, palms open, a quiet invitation rather than a command. "You are fighting too hard alone," she said softly. "You do not need to." His ears twitched at her tone, at the lack of fear. Perhaps he had expected trembling voices or hurried footsteps running the opposite direction. Instead, he received stillness. A healer's stillness. Minutes stretched thin as frost, yet Evelyn felt the forest's attention tightening. The ground hummed faintly beneath her boots, a low pulse from the roots. Cain's gaze flicked to the trees, then back to her, as if asking whether she understood what she had walked into. She did, but she remained. His breathing steadied again, each inhale less ragged than the last. Her presence soothed something raw inside him, something torn between instinct and exhaustion. When his massive head lowered toward the earth in a gesture that almost resembled trust, a quiet warmth bloomed in Evelyn's chest. Not romantic, not mystical, just recognition. She exhaled once more, gentle and warm in the cold night, and the Alpha King closed his eyes for the first time in what looked like days, letting her breath guide him back from the edge. The night deepened around Evelyn Ward as a thin veil of fog drifted through the clearing, soft as breath against her skin. Cain Thorne's massive form remained still beside the fallen log, his fur rising and falling with a steadier rhythm now, each inhale guided by her calm presence. The forest watched them with quiet suspicion, its branches barely moving, as if waiting to see whether this healer would join the fate of those who came before her. Evelyn sensed the weight of that expectation but did not let it shape her actions. Instead, she leaned forward slightly, letting Cain catch the warmth of her breath once more. His ears twitched, and his eyes opened slowly, their gold softened to a warm amber. He seemed less like a force of nature in that moment, and more like someone fighting a very old loneliness. "You are coming back," she said softly. "Not an order, just an acknowledgement of the small victory." Cain shifted his weight, lowering his head as if listening to something she could not hear. His claws pressed gently into the earth, not in tension, but in grounding. The curse inside him moved like a cold draft, brushing past Evelyn's senses, but it no longer dominated the clearing the way it had before. Her presence had changed the balance, even if only slightly. Evelyn reached into her satchel again and removed a small flask of warmed herb infusion. The metal container glowed faintly in the moonlight. She unscrewed the lid with slow, careful hands so the sound would not startle him. Steam drifted upward. Cain sniffed the air, a soft huff leaving his nose. Evelyn set the flask near him but did not push it closer, giving him the freedom to choose. After a few quiet seconds, he lowered his head and let the warmth touch him, breathing in the gentle scent of cedar and wildflower. The forest seemed to withdraw its tension, just a fraction, as if surprised by his acceptance. Evelyn watched him with steady eyes. "It will help ease the strain," she murmured. "Not cure, but ease." Cain's gaze flicked toward her. In the soft reflection of amber light, she thought she saw a question there. Why her? Why now? But neither of them voiced it. Instead, a subtle shift passed through his frame, as though the strength holding him together was no longer fighting itself. Evelyn placed her hand against the cool bark of the fallen log, grounding herself. The silence around them grew calmer, shaped by her breath and his slow exhale. Leaves rustled in a gentle pattern, not threatening, just curious. A soft pulse of energy moved through the soil, nudging against her senses. She recognized it as the forest's test, a gentle push instead of a strike. She answered not with force, but with patience. "You are not alone out here," she whispered. "Not tonight." Cain blinked slowly, the gesture almost human in its thoughtfulness. Then he shifted his weight closer to the warmth she offered, not touching, but near enough that she could feel the heat radiating from him. It was a quiet gesture of trust, subtle and significant. For the first time, Evelyn felt the forest hesitate, uncertain of how to challenge a healer who refused to fear it. And in that pause, Kane breathed easier. The fog that had lingered low to the ground began to thin as dawn's first pale light brushed through the trees, turning the edges of leaves into soft silver. Evelyn Ward felt the temperature shift before she saw it, a gentle warming of the air that told her the night's tension was loosening its grip. Kane Thorne lifted his head slightly, sensing the change as well. His amber eyes reflected the early light, steady now, no longer flickering with the strain that had held him captive hours before. Evelyn watched him, careful not to disturb the fragile peace that had settled over the clearing. She adjusted her position on the fallen log, letting her boots sink into the cool soil, while she kept her breathing slow and even. Her presence had become an anchor for him, a rhythm for him to match, and she maintained it with quiet intention. Kane shifted his weight, his movements controlled, no longer burdened by the frantic instability that had shaken him earlier. He pressed his front paws into the earth, grounding himself as if testing whether the calm was real. Evelyn sensed the forest observing, its attention curling around them in cautious spirals, not hostile, just curious. "You are holding steady," she said softly. Her voice barely rose above the breeze, but Kane's ears angled toward her, catching every word. A small affirmation hummed through the clearing, subtle but present. She reached into her satchel once more, retrieving a thin vial filled with a soft golden tincture. When she uncorked it, a faint scent of honeyed bark drifted upward, warm and soothing. "This is mild," she explained, turning the vial gently so the liquid inside caught the light. "It helps restore balance when something inside you is pulled too far in one direction." She placed the vial a little closer than before, a sign of growing trust. Kane lowered his head, sniffing the warm air around it. He did not drink, but his shoulders eased, the gentle scent alone offering comfort. Evelyn smiled softly, recognizing the small progress for what it was. Healing did not always require touch. Sometimes presence, breath, and patience were enough. A faint breeze brushed through the trees, carrying with it the flutter of wings somewhere high above. Morning birds began their quiet calls, their notes cautious but hopeful, as though they sensed the shift in the forest's mood. Kane's gaze moved toward the forest edge, then back to her, as if checking whether she understood what that meant. She did. The forest was not rejecting her. "Not yet. I can stay with you a while longer," she said, brushing a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "If you wish it." His response was subtle but clear. He stepped forward just enough that the warmth of his presence reached her, a silent acceptance. Evelyn's breath softened, her chest rising in a calm rhythm that he instinctively mirrored. The forest's pulse quieted. The roots beneath her boots felt less restless. And in the stillness, Kane's posture shifted from survival to something closer to trust. Not complete, not certain, but enough that Evelyn felt the weight of the night begin to lift. The healer's breath and the Alpha King's quiet steadiness settled together in the early morning light, marking the first true moment the forest had not pushed her away. Morning settled fully over the forest by the time Evelyn Ward rose from the fallen log, brushing the damp from her palms. The clearing held a quiet that did not feel threatening anymore, a softness shaped by warm light filtering through the branches. Kane Thorne watched her with calm, attentive eyes, his large frame steady as he took in every shift of her movement. The curse inside him no longer pushed against the air in jagged pulses. It rested, subdued, as if her presence had given it less room to cling to. Evelyn stepped a little closer, letting her boots press gently into the loose soil. The ground felt warmer than before, almost as if the forest itself had exhaled after holding tension for too long. The change was subtle but real. She knelt beside Kane, moving slowly so he could track her motions. "Your breathing is even," she murmured. "That is good." His ears twitched, and he blinked once, almost as if acknowledging her observation. She reached into her satchel again, this time pulling out a small woven charm made from braided grasses. It was simple, meant to mark a moment of progress rather than provide healing. She set it down carefully near his front paw. "This is just a marker," she explained softly. "A reminder of where you were strong." Kane lowered his head to sniff the charm, and for a moment Evelyn could feel the warmth of his breath stirring the loose strands. A quiet acceptance radiated from him, not from instinct, but from choice. The forest reacted differently this time. The branches above them rustled in a gentle ripple, not in warning, but in something that resembled curiosity. A ray of light crossed through the clearing, brightening the patterns on the ground. Evelyn lifted her face toward it. There was something cleansing in the warmth, something that made the tension in her shoulders ease. She looked back at Cain. His posture had changed without him realizing it. He stood a little taller, his weight more balanced. No trembling, no frantic shifting, just presence. "You are meeting the morning," she said softly, a small smile warming her voice. "That is something the curse has not allowed you to do freely in a long while, is it?" Cain's response was subtle. He shifted closer, closing a little of the space between them. The warmth of his body touched the cool morning air, creating a gentle pocket of heat around her knees. She did not move away. The stillness around them felt different now, shaped not by survival, but by connection. Evelyn placed her hand on the log again, grounding herself in its solid texture. The forest hummed underneath, a faint pulse she had grown accustomed to. It no longer pushed her back. It simply watched. Cain's amber eyes followed her breath as she exhaled slowly, the warm cloud drifting in the cool air. He mirrored her again, drawing in a steady inhale and releasing it with quiet control. The curse inside him did not surge. It did not resist. It listened. And in that simple harmony, Evelyn felt the forest shifting its judgment. Just a little. Just enough. The morning quiet deepened into a gentle hush as Evelyn Ward stood from the fallen log, brushing the faint dew from her fingertips. The forest no longer felt as though it braced against her presence. Instead, it listened, its branches angled toward her in subtle curves, as if waiting to see what she would do next. Cain Thorne's amber eyes tracked her every movement, steady and aware. The wild edge that had haunted him through the night softened now into something thoughtful. His breathing held a calm rhythm she had helped him rediscover, each inhale matching the soft rise of her chest. Evelyn glanced toward the path deeper into the woods, sensing the shift before she fully understood it. The air carried a thin vibration, a delicate pulse that felt neither hostile nor welcoming, but questioning. The forest was assessing her, testing her resolve, perhaps. She placed a gentle hand against the bark of the nearest tree, feeling its cool texture under her palm. "It wants to know why I am here," she murmured, more to the moment than to Cain. His ears angled sharply, responding to the tone of her voice. When she looked back at him, she found him standing closer than before, his large frame low and controlled. He was not guarding her. He was aligning with her, watching the same faint disturbance she sensed. The forest's pulse grew stronger, a subtle tremor beneath the soil. It was not a threat. It was an invitation to speak her truth. Evelyn drew a slow breath, letting it warm the morning air as she exhaled. "I came because healing is not just a task," she said softly. "It is a promise." Cain's amber gaze deepened, as though he understood more than she expected. His shoulders eased, and for the first time, a small sound left him, a soft rumble that was not distress and not warning. It felt like acknowledgement. Evelyn moved to kneel beside him once more, her hand resting lightly on her knee. "The forest has turned away every healer," she continued, her voice quiet but unwavering. "Not because they lacked skill, but because they tried to force their will where understanding was needed." Cain tilted his head slightly, as if hearing the quiet meaning beneath her words. She offered her palm upward, not touching him, simply letting him feel the warmth of her breath as it drifted across the space between them. Cain stepped forward, lowering his head just enough to meet that warmth. His breath mingled with hers, creating a calm pocket of air where the tension of the forest could not reach. It was a fragile moment, delicate but profound. The trees responded with a soft rustle, a slow movement of leaves that felt almost approving. Evelyn smiled gently. "You are not the enemy of this place," she whispered. "You are part of it. But the curse convinced you that you were alone." Cain's eyes softened, reflecting the truth in her words. He took another slow breath, guided by hers, and the air around them settled into a quiet harmony. The forest's pulse eased, no longer questioning, simply observing. For the first time since she had stepped into these woods, Evelyn felt the weight of the ancient curse shift ever so slightly, as if reconsidering its hold on him. And Cain, calm beside her, breathed with a steadiness that seemed to touch the heart of the forest itself. The forest's quiet pulse shifted as midday light filtered through the canopy, warm and thin like a hand pressed gently over a wound. Evelyn Ward felt the change before she understood it. The ground beneath her boots thrummed with a faint urgency, not hostile, but insistent, as though the forest itself was bracing for something she had not yet seen. Cain Thorne sensed it too. His amber eyes lifted toward the deeper tree lean, pupils narrowing slightly as the air around them tightened. The calm they had built together held steady, but a tension threaded through the wind, subtle and cold, brushing over Evelyn's skin like a warning. She straightened slowly, letting her breath remain steady so Cain would mirror her calm. The forest tremor grew stronger, rippling faintly through the soil. It was not the curse fighting back in fury. It felt more like a summons. A reminder that the healing between them had awakened something older than both of them. Evelyn placed her hand against the rough bark of a nearby trunk, grounding herself as she listened. "It wants us to move," she said quietly. "Not away. Forward." Cain stepped closer, lowering his head beside her shoulder. His presence warmed the cool air, steady and protective without pressing against her space. She could feel the question in his stillness. Was it safe? Evelyn took a slow inhale, letting the scent of moss and distant pines settle her thoughts. "I think it wants to show us where the curse began," she murmured. The forest did not confirm, but the subtle tremor in the soil pulsed in agreement. Cain shifted his weight, then nudged the fallen log gently, a silent signal that he trusted her direction. Evelyn nodded and stepped forward. Cain moved beside her, matching her pace, his stride careful and controlled. The forest opened a narrow path ahead, branches pulling back as though granting passage. The further they walked, the quieter everything became. No birdsong, no rustling leaves. Even the wind softened until Evelyn could hear nothing but her own breath and the gentle rhythm of Cain beside her. The air cooled, carrying a thin, metallic tang that reminded her of old stories whispered around healer fires. She paused, turning her face toward the faint glimmer ahead. It was not sunlight. It was something softer, like the reflection of water under moonlight. Cain's ears shifted sharply, catching the same distant hum. The path led them into a small hollow where a shallow pool reflected the sky in a pale, silver mirror, though no sunlight touched it. The water was still, untouched by breeze or falling leaves. Evelyn stepped closer, her pulse steady, though her skin tingled with the energy rising from the pool's surface. "This is where it began," she whispered. Cain lowered his head beside her, his breath stirring the surface just slightly. The water responded with a faint ripple, a shimmering that reached toward Evelyn as if recognizing her breath from afar. She felt no danger in it, only a deep ache, old and tired, longing for release. She knelt beside the edge, her reflection wavering with each exhale. Cain stood over her, steady and warm, his presence a quiet shield. Evelyn reached her hand toward the water, stopping just above the surface. The pool brightened, responding to the warmth of her breath before her fingers even touched it. And in that gleaming shift of light, she felt the forest speak without words, guiding her toward the truth hidden beneath its silence. The air above the silver pool brightened as if holding its own quiet sunrise, though no beam of light touched it from the sky. Evelyn Ward kept her hand suspended just above the surface, feeling warmth lift from the water in slow waves that brushed against her fingertips like gentle breath. Cain Thorne stood beside her, his large frame steady and alert. Though not tense, the forest's hush had deepened into something reverent, as if it recognized the moment unfolding. The pool shimmered again, brighter this time, responding not to touch but to intention. Evelyn inhaled softly, letting her breath steady before she released it across the surface. The silver ripples opened outward in a circular pattern, revealing faint shapes beneath the water. Not threats, not shadows, memories. The images formed slowly, delicate as reflections on glass. Evelyn saw a clearing she did not recognize, bathed in morning light much like the one they stood in now. A younger Cain stood at its center in human form, shoulders broader, expression open and unburdened. He reached toward the trees with a hopeful steadiness, as if answering a call from the forest itself. Evelyn leaned closer, her breath warming the cool surface. The picture sharpened. She saw a small cluster of healers entering the clearing, carrying woven charms similar to the one she had placed before Cain earlier. Their expressions were calm, trusting. They approached with hands open, offering help. The memory trembled. The pool's glow dimmed slightly, as if preparing her for the next part. The healers stepped forward, but the forest recoiled, not in anger, but in fear. The air in the reflection grew darker, the trees curling inward. The healers tried to speak, tried to soothe, but their intention clashed with the forest's ancient instinct to protect. The imbalance sparked the curse, not as punishment, but as a shield. Cain in the memory reached out to intervene, but he was caught between the two forces, neither fully healed nor fully resisting. The curse wrapped around him like roots searching for stability, misinterpreting his strength as a vessel for its fear. Evelyn's breath faltered for a moment, sending a small ripple across the surface. The pool softened the image, dissolving the memory into gentle light. She whispered, "It never meant to harm you." Cain lowered his head toward her shoulder, a quiet sound leaving his chest, soft and contemplative. His amber eyes reflected the fading silver glow as if absorbing the truth she had uncovered. Evelyn exhaled again, letting her breath create a calm warmth that spread across the pool. "They forced their will," she murmured. "They tried to control what only needed understanding." The pool pulsed once more, acknowledging her words. The forest's energy shifted around them, not fierce anymore, but tentative, like a creature stepping out of hiding. Cain moved closer, the warmth of his presence steady at her side. He understood the truth she had uncovered. The curse was not born of malice. It was born of fear, and fear could be unmade. Evelyn reached her hand toward the surface again. This time the pool glowed brighter, not because of the forest, but because Cain's breath joined hers, warm and steady, merging with her own. Together, their shared exhale cast a soft, golden shimmer across the water, revealing the beginning of something the forest had never allowed before. The golden shimmer drifting across the pool steadied, resting like a soft layer of dawn upon the surface. Evelyn Ward held her breath for a quiet moment, sensing the forest shift around them with a cautious anticipation, as though it waited for something only she and Cain Thorne could complete. The air thickened with warmth, not oppressive, but gentle, shaped by their shared presence. Cain stood close beside her, his breath steady and warm against the cool air, his amber eyes reflecting the soft glow rising from the pool. The fear that had once clung to his posture was gone, replaced by a calm resolve that radiated through the clearing. Evelyn let her hand hover once more above the surface of the water. The shimmer responded instantly, reaching upward in thin, delicate strands of light, as if the pool itself recognized her intention to heal rather than control. Cain leaned closer, lowering his head beside her shoulder, their breaths mingling again in a warm, natural rhythm. The forest responded with a soft hum through the soil, an ancient vibration that carried both memory and release. Evelyn whispered, "It is ready." Cain exhaled, his breath calm and full, and the air between them glowed faintly with the merging warmth of their steady breathing. The pool brightened, illuminating the hollow with a pale gold that softened every edge of the forest. The curse that had pressed against Cain's spirit began to lift, not in a dramatic rush, but in a gentle unraveling, like a knot loosening thread by thread. Evelyn felt it withdraw, not in defeat, but in peace. The roots beneath her boots eased. The branches overhead relaxed their tense curl. The entire forest released a breath it had held for years. Cain's form shifted subtly beside her, the tension in his frame dissolving into a calm neither of them had known since their journey began. His amber eyes softened, reflecting not pain, but clarity. Evelyn moved her hand closer to the water, letting her breath guide the final pulse of healing. Warmth rose from the pool and wrapped around her in quiet acknowledgement, touching Cain as well. The glow grew brighter for a heartbeat, then softened into a final luminous ripple that disappeared beneath the surface. The forest fell completely silent, not from fear, but from reverence. Cain lifted his head slightly, the light in his eyes clear and steady. He was not bound anymore, not held, not fighting. He was simply present. Evelyn rose slowly, her legs steady beneath her. Cain followed, stepping close enough for her to feel the warmth of his breath brush her sleeve, a silent affirmation that he understood what she had given him and what the forest had released. She looked into his amber eyes, seeing not the shadow of the curse but the quiet strength he had carried all along. The forest shifted again, branches parting just slightly to let a soft beam of afternoon light settle over them. Evelyn exhaled, and Cain mirrored her with calm precision, their breaths warm in the still air. For the first time, the forest did not resist. It listened, and in that listening silence, Evelyn understood that healing was not a spell or a force. It was a moment shared, breath to breath, until the world finally remembered how to be gentle again.